you can look up the legend of the destruction of humanity, otherwise called the Book of the Celestial Cow or Book of the Heavenly Cow. Could be another coincidence, just like those names: Thutmose, Kamos, Amos, Amenmos. Next, Papyrus d'Aubierne, number EA10183/6 at the British Museum. Compare the tale of two brothers with Genesis 39 verse 6 onwards. You have fun. Famine stela of King Josiah around 2600 BCE. In a period of 7 years, grain was scant, compared with Genesis 41 verse 30, and there shall arise after them 7 years of famine. Papyrus Leiden in Holland, between 1800 and 1600 BCE. Now, even if Moses existed, he wasn't even born yet. Chapter 2, line 10. Indeed, the river is blood. Exodus 7:20. The waters that were in the river were turned to blood. There's plenty of other so-called coincidences. Let's deal with them. Chapter 2. Blood is everywhere. Exodus 7:21. There was blood throughout all the land of Egypt. Chapter 2. Men shrink from human beings and thirst after water. Exodus 7:24. And all the Egyptians digged round about the river for water to drink. Chapter 2. He who places his brother in the ground is everywhere. Exodus 12:30. There was not a house where there was not one dead. Now, probably the most famous papyrus in the world, plate 31 and 32 of the Pert Emheru, the Papyrus of Ani, commonly called Negative Confessions, Admonitions of Ma'at, Declaration of Innocence, or Principles of Ma'at. We're going to have a look. It's on page 576 that is translated. I mentioned the Papyrus of Nebseni earlier, which is dated at 1400 BCE by the British Museum, but we have a different date on one of the books of Wallis Birch. It's the Chapters of the Coming Forth by Day, the Egyptian text according to the Theban Recession. Now, you can see there, that's the introduction. We cannot be far wrong in ascribing it to the first half of the period of the rule of the kings of the 18th dynasty over Egypt, i.e. about 1600 BC. So even with the benefit of the doubt concerning the historicity of Moses, he wouldn't even have been born yet. So there wouldn't have been obviously no Exodus yet. Right now we are going to compare the laws of Ma'at with the 10 commandments. Let's have a look. Page 576, like I said, from the translation. Negative confession number 27, I have not blasphemed. Exodus 20 verse 7, you shall not misuse the name of the Lord. Negative confession number 24, I have not transgressed the law. Exodus 20 verse 8, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. Negative confession number 4, I have not slain man and woman. Verse 13, you shall not murder. Negative confession number 3, I have not stolen. Exodus 20 verse 15, you shall not steal. Negative confession number 8 and 18 respectively, I have not uttered lies, I have slandered no man. Verse 16, you shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. 20 and 21, I have not debauched the wife of any man. Verse 17, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife. Hopefully you will forgive me if the quality is not so great. You're supposed to see it all right there in full screen mode. Otherwise, once again, I'm sorry. Yeah, you will have to just go back and make notes of what I said rather than being able to read it on the screen. It's just that there's so much, but I didn't want to split it there. Also, let me avoid any confusion. If you see the Bible quoted, it doesn't mean that I believe in it. I'm the type of person who pay attention to the original, not the copy. And even though most people go the other way around, that's because they do not know any better. Some people might tell you, look, the ancient Egyptians worshipped the sun, and so on. You just quote Psalm 84, verse 11. For the Lord God is a sun and shield. hopefully they'll leave you alone, because either they go by the book or they shouldn't tell you anything at all. You cannot just pick and choose what suits you. Let's move on. Now I have to do this, especially for those who don't know. They keep repeating lies, so we have to keep saying the truth. The race of the ancient Egyptians. Now, Herodotus, nicknamed the father of history, he lived way after Kemet was finally invaded, which was around 600 BC, right? He was there 200 years later, more or less. And still at that time, he said, thirdly, it is certain that the natives of the country are black with the heat. And in saying that the dove was black, they indicate that the woman was Egyptian. It goes on to say, the Egyptians said they believed that the Colchians were a portion of the army of Sesostris. That this was so I conjectured myself, not only because they are dark-skinned and have curly hair. And he used the word olutrikes for nappy hair. That's just in case they say that, it's a bad translation. Next we have Aristotle, who lived 100 years after Herodotus. He says, those who are too black are cowards, like for instance the Egyptians and Ethiopians. He used the words agon melanes, which is Greek for excessively black. Once again, in case they try to pull that wrong translation thing. Next, Volney. He was speaking about the Copts. What a subject for meditation to see the present barbarism and ignorance of the Copts, descendants of the alliance between the profound genius of the Egyptians and the brilliant mind of the Greeks. Just to think that this race of black men, today our slave and the object of our scorn, is the very race to which we owe our art, science, and even the use of speech. Next, Champollion. You might have heard that name before. That's because he is the first European to decipher the hieroglyphs, thanks to the Rosetta Stone, which is in the British Museum. Now, he was writing to his brother. That was in, 18th century. And he said, we find there Egyptians and Africans represented in the same way, which could not be otherwise. Now I'm going to show you what he was describing. That's a painting from the tomb of Seti I. It represents the races of men as known by the ancient Egyptians. As you can see, it is greatly damaged and it doesn't look natural to me. I think some stuff were bothering them they didn't want us to know, because not only you have the image, but also you have the meduneta, the hieroglyph, which describes the scene. But anyway, there is that drawing there, which is supposed to represent what I just shown, and it suits them because they're trying to say that the darker complexion is a Sudanese and then the one on the right is an Egyptian. But it's not the only place where they have shown the races of men as known to them, and Champollion actually talks about this in the letter to his brother. For example, there's the tomb of Ramesses III, and there's a German archaeologist called Lepsius who has made a drawing to depict that. Now, before I read it, I want to let you know that Cheikh Anta Diop actually used that image for the cover of his book Nation et Agriculture, which is the French equivalent to African Origin of Civilization, Myth or Reality. Now, what is written says, this painting from the tomb of Ramesses III, 1200 BC, shows that the Egyptians saw themselves as black and painted themselves such without possible confusion with the Indo-Europeans, Caucasoids, or the Semites. It is a representation of the races in their most minute differences, which ensures the accuracy of the colors. Throughout their entire history, the Egyptians never entertained the fantasy of portraying themselves by types B or D. Now, A is the Egyptian seen by himself, black type, B is the Indo-European, C the other blacks in Africa, and D the Semite. Now, I do not know if that description is actually on Lepsius' book, because I haven't read it and I haven't seen it. But I know for a fact that the image is, because Job has made the references in his book. Okay? Now I need you to pay attention